How many are waiting?
Say that again, sorry.
Did you say how many are waiting?
Not yet. I will see that in a moment.
Okay, thanks.
I don't have it yet.
Yep, no problem. How many are waiting?
7. Say that again, sorry.
Did you say how many are waiting?
Not yet. I will see that in a moment.
Thanks.
I don't have it yet.
No problem. How many are waiting?
7. Say that again, sorry. All right, we're live on YouTube. We have 8 watchers as of now. It's 2200 hours. Dwayne, I will make you host now, and you guys can go ahead with the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you are a go. You are the host now.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to wait for a minute.
Yeah, the meeting is live in YouTube. Okay, confirmed.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Dwayne Rose. I am a division chief in the H Directorate for Recruiting and Retention. One of the ways we can help meet our objectives to get new and retain current members is to offer training that will support the knowledge that our HR team, our auxiliary needs. That's why we're here. Today's training is on best practices and the recently rewritten 7001 new auxiliary member application. I do want to mention we have 2 additional presentations that will follow before the end of the year. The next one will be critical forms, and that'll include how to process and get it right so you don't have to do it over. 7035 change in membership status. We're hoping to get that out in time so it's useful. And the third topic will be on onboarding new members. For the purpose of delivery, we grouped all the auxiliary districts into an Eastern, a Central, and Pacific region rather than using the U.S. Coast Guard's Atlantic and Pacific areas. I think it makes more sense because of all the time zones we're dealing with. The reason we're using YouTube is that some of our sessions have too many participants for Zoom to be able to support it. When we are sending the presentation to you on YouTube, you can train more people in less time, but we're sorry we don't have the interaction between presenter and participants like we do in a Zoom meeting. However, in YouTube, you'll see a topic description below the YouTube presentation screen. The last sentence includes a link to a form you can use to submit questions. You can do that during the presentation or later. The presentation is being recorded, and the same link that you used to get to the presentation, you can also access that later and see the presentation from the beginning. Yeah, you can, just a reminder, you can access the question link even after the presentation tonight. If you have any questions using the form, you can also email me. My email is in the email invitation for this training, and it's also at the end of Rio's presentation, and you can also find me in the AUX Officer directory. Anyway, let's get underway. Your presenter tonight is Rio Annis. He's a branch chief in the H Directorate in my division, and he's also a division commander. He's a district staff officer for HR, staff officer HR, and flotilla staff officer HR, and also FSO of Marine Safety, just in case he gets bored. I share these same offices with him, except for the last one. Anyway, let's get underway so we can get this training to you and then get you out of here. Rio, take it away.
Okay.
that visible to you, Dwayne?
Yeah, it looks great.
All right. All right, welcome everybody. As Dwayne said, the session we're doing tonight is best practices. We'll cover a little bit about the initial contact with a prospect and then the new member application and the overall process for handling that member application. So effectively utilizing best practices in HR. Does it matter? Well, yes, it really does. If we do our job, effectively and efficiently, that new prospect is going to have a lot more confidence and have a better impression of our overall organization. And that's based on our, first impression, to them. And utilizing the best practices in HR. Well, HR, it's not rocket science. It's just knowing the rules and the process and consistently following it. Now, I know some of the HR personnel might be brand new this year, or they haven't handled applications too much. And this would be the same for, new flotilla commanders. So you might not be too familiar with the process or the application itself. You have a lot of questions, so then you don't feel comfortable with it. But once you get to understand, how it works, you become more comfortable with it, and then it's no longer a difficult process. It really comes easy. So welcome to all the HR officers that we feel they're the most valuable of all other bridge staff. You bring in new people, you help retain them, and it's life's blood of the auxiliary is our members. So never forget, with no members, there's no auxiliary. So we in HR are very important. We may not have the, fun job out on the water, but if we don't do our job right, those people who actually do that job out on the water won't be there. So we need to really feel good about what we're doing, help new members get in. And, we're always going to be there for these new members from the beginning, middle to the end of their service. Since we're usually the first contact they have, we probably will be that go-to person for them for a very long time. They'll be asking us how to do particular things or where to find something. And even if it's not in an area that we operate in, we should always give them the assistance they need. We can point them to the right spot to get the answers they're looking for. And remember, we are Team Coast Guard, Semper Paratus. So, little presentation note here. This is a national program that we're putting out. And there's going to be some standard practices and guidelines that should be consistent throughout all districts and DIROC's offices. And it's intended for, to offer district HR officers, basic training materials for their new officers or to refresh current ones so they don't have to create them. So, and I know from experience, I've had to create my own programs within my district. So in this program we're doing now, we're hoping to provide the materials to you so you don't have to do that. Now, one thing to note is we do know that there are differences between different districts and DIROC's offices. So, they'll have different, nuances in how they handle things. But overall, this will be a good program that covers everything consistently. But if you do encounter something that's slightly different, just check with your senior leadership for direction. What we're going to cover in this program here is, the initial contact with the new prospect, some vital interview points to make sure that you cover, the application process, Follow-up, next steps, and then the application completion itself, the actual form, and some fine points, things to be aware of that might be common mistakes or something. Just make sure it's done correctly. Then questions, as Dwayne said, will be handled through a link that you clicked on for this session tonight. And then if you have any questions you want to give to us directly, you can do that as well. And our contact information will be at the end of this program. So, talking about the initial contact, anyone you meet might be a potential auxiliary member. So you'd want to get their name, their email, their phone number, and share yours. I know sometimes we may be talking with somebody and we might give them a business card or we might hand them a recruiting brochure, but we really should try to get their name and email so we can follow up with them. And you want to be enthusiastic, friendly, helpful, reliable. You know, if we feel good about our job, which hopefully we do, we love working with the Coast Guard, we should be able to expand on that and let this person know how we feel. And if we're enthusiastic, then they may feel the same way about joining our organization. You want to respond quickly to all communications, including those in the AAMS, the Auxiliary Applicant Management System. And you want to make every effort to answer inquiries and be available. Getting back to this person, you know, in a timely fashion. You know, if they call and they leave a voice message or an email, try to get back to them within 24 hours or at least 48 at the outside. We want to be prompt on that. Before in-person meetings with prospects, you should notify your flotilla commander that you're heading out to do that. This would be much the same as if you were heading out to do vessel exams or program visits or any other kind of mission activity. And that's because, as you know through the auxiliary manual, we are covered by the insurance, the same as if we are active duty personnel when we are out on auxiliary business, actually on the mission. So that's critical to make sure that somebody knows that you are doing that. Remember, you are probably the prospect's first contact, so it's important to make a good impression. You know, encourage wearing the Coast Guard Auxiliary uniform for meetings and be well groomed. So you'd be setting that example when you meet them for that interview or helping them with the application. They're going to have a good impression of the organization they're about to join if you're setting that good example. You suggest possibly attending a flotilla meeting or an auxiliary event. Personally, I prefer the auxiliary event if I want to invite this prospect, because they get to then, not only can they meet some of our, members in the flotilla, but they can see us in action. You know, what are we doing at this public affairs event, or at, doing vessel exam or teaching a boating safety class. They can kind of see how we do our work. They can attend the flotilla meeting, of course, where, hopefully they'll meet other members, and hopefully the members, they'll engage this new person, make them feel welcome. But at the same time, you also know that some of these flotilla meetings can be quite boring. And so it might not make the best impression on a new person coming in. Don't express any negative opinions of other flotillas. If this prospect is considering joining your flotilla or maybe considering joining another, that's their decision. And if you start giving out any negative opinions of other flotillas, they might not have a good impression of the overall organization. We want to make the suggestions and decisions based on the prospect's best interest. It's better that they join the auxiliary, even if it's not your flotilla. Recruits will look to you to be a mentor and a guide. As I said before, they may you're going to be like the go-to person for a long time. So you want to be responsive to them and provide all the help you can. So mention the mandatory core training and other required training when you're meeting this person. You know, this interview is going to be a kind of a two-way street. We want to find out if this new prospect is going to be a good match for the auxiliary. And at the same time, they need to know whether we in the auxiliary are going to be a good match for them. You want to talk about commitment and satisfaction of service and auxiliary requirements, including technology and reports. So sometimes I bring my laptop and I will show them different areas of the website, including the auxiliary directory and, you know, the reports and things like that. They may have a boating safety certificate card. You can check that at that time. They can still join the auxiliary if they don't have one. It can always be completed later. Or you can have them go through the boating safety course as part of the new member, you know, application process. Share there's personal costs. We don't want that to be hidden from them at all. Let them know that uniforms are not provided, that there's a cost to that, and that there are annual dues. Personal transportation, also, you know, uniform grooming standards. We want to make sure everything is clear to them, that they have a good picture of what they're getting into. You can talk about ID cards at this time too, which is part of, you know, getting through their mandatory training. That's how they can get an ID card. Now, some flotillas may take a photo in the beginning and hold it for later to then submit for the ID card. And if you have a trop shirt, you can loan them for this photo. That's great. You do need a red background. But they also, if it's their first photo, they don't necessarily have to have a trop shirt on. Share the Coast Guard story. You know, we do save lives. We may not always know it. Maybe we're teaching a boating safety class. You know, who knows how many of those people that we just had in our class, you know, may go out and be a safer boater and not become a casualty out in water. So the new application process, like number one point here is make sure you're using the most current application. And you'll always find that in the forms warehouse. And it will always be listed there with the new date on it. And currently it is 02/25. That's the last update that we had. And you can download it from here. And then you open it up from your downloads, and then the drop downs will work pretty well. If you just fill it out from opening it from the Forms Warehouse site, some of those drop downs don't work too well. So you got to download it first, then open it from your downloads, and then it will work. And it's a simple PDF fill in, lots of you know, drop downs in there that make it easy. I think it's much better than the previous version we had. This can be printed out. It's 6 pages, and it can be handwritten, but I do caution on that the handwriting needs to be really legible, because if this gets to your DIROC's office and they can't read it, it's going to slow down processing. And also below the application in the Forms Warehouse is a separate document for the instructions. And the instructions are really good, very precise, and really help you out if you follow those instructions. At this time, we also want to have the applicant review the new member student study guide and take the exam, which is open book. And it can be done online with that exam. So they would have the results emailed to them, and then they could forward it to you for processing on their application. This also is found under the Human Resources Directorate, new member class. And it's, it's an easy, online links that'll take them straight to those items. The new member exam can be done in paper form as well. It can be printed out and they can, take the test that way. When you are done grading it, you can inform them of the incorrect answers. But if they need to retake the test, you shouldn't really be giving them all the correct answers. But if they only missed one or two and they actually passed, it's better, go ahead and give them the right answers. It's training. It's letting them know, what the proper answer is. The exam can be retaken, and suggest reviewing a new member student study guide again carefully. They can retake it again and again. There's nothing wrong with them not passing it first time. There's 30 multiple choice questions, and passing score is 80%. So here's an example of the H Directorate website under the new member class. So you can see there in the middle with Uncle Sam, the new member student study guide link, and then the new member online exam link. Over on the left column under that new member class, you can also see where the paper exam, that's where you can print that out. There's also an answer key for you. That is not accessed by the new member. You would have to log in on the member resources site to get that. Now, some flotillas do collect initial dues, and make sure that the payment is sent to your FSO-FN, but verify with your chain of leadership. This is not an absolute process. I know that some flotillas even talk about an application fee, and there's no such thing at all. What they're doing is collecting dues in advance. When a new member joins, depending on what part of the year, what quarter of the year they join, you'll get billed from district on that. I think the first quarter of this year was like $26. So some flotillas collect these things up front. The fingerprint technician or the citizenship verifier or law enforcement, they will review your passport, applicant's passport card, or passport with signature, and also the original or certified birth certificate and approved government photo ID. You'd also review the Social Security card and get copies of required documents. Again, check the application instructions. They're very good on this. Obtain a copy of the certificate card of the NASBLA approved voting safety course. And again, they can take that later if they haven't gone through a course yet. Now, some districts require that a copy of this voting safety certificate be sent in with the application, and some districts do not. So check with your chain of leadership on that. Make sure the new member application package is shared with the flotilla commander as soon as possible. We want to try to be as efficient as we can getting these applications done in a timely manner with this prospect. The longer it drags out, the more chance there is that a new edition may come out, and the current application you're working with would just have to be switched over to the new version. The flotilla signature, flotilla commander's signature, is an endorsement. They're not just signing it for the sake of signing the application. They are signing as they are endorsing this application, that they've reviewed it. It is complete and accurate. The Auxiliary Association membership form that we used to use, the AUX10, is no longer required, but that is built into this new member application. You want to call potential members as frequently as possible. You want to really keep up with them on this application process. I know that some prospects are a little slower than others on getting the things done that need to be done. And when you make contacts with this person, if they've come to you by way of the AAMS system, make sure you're making contacts in that system. If there's no notes for 60 days in that system, that name will drop out. Doesn't mean you can't continue to process this person, but we won't be able to track them through this AAMS system. Unless the recruit says they're not joining, you want to continue contacting them for at least 3 months. Again, as I say, some people are pretty slow. Some are right on it, and you've got things done within a couple of days, but I've encountered some people that are very slow in getting through the application process. Send meeting reminders. You know, if you invite them to a meeting, make sure you're sending meeting reminders out 3 days prior to the next meeting, or even earlier. You want to make sure that they have enough time to be able to plan to attend that meeting. Again, we want to check progress with their paperwork, see if they have any questions or concerns, and follow up with them on this. And for those people that might be dragging it out, get a commitment for steps required in the application process. You want to keep following up with them. So the application itself, I'm going to talk about some of the fine points here. So in the upper left corner, as you can see, this is the most current version, 0225. Now, if the person does not have a middle name, then use NMN. That means no middle name. A note about suffix here. That would be someone who has a junior or senior, second, third. Just don't add NA. If they don't have a suffix, just leave it blank. And also, suffix is not a prefix. I've seen people put in Mr. and Mrs., and that's not what you put in that box. As far as the occupation codes, it's good to complete all 3, but it's not required. If they just want to fill in 1, that's sufficient. Here you'll have a box for marking whether they have their boating safety certificate or not. And very important point here, weight is fill in manually, height is fill in manually, eye color and hair color are drop downs. So for the height, it has to be in inches only, no fractions or decimals. I've seen some pretty creative things, and it's just whole numbers. So addition on page 1, they'll fill in all their contact information here. Quite often I see somebody submit an application where they don't have the additional 4 on a postal code. And if they don't, that's something that you as the HR person or flotilla commander, you could add this in yourself. And I found a really good site for this is the zip code lookup that I have here as the link for that. They do need to have an emergency contact. That is actually required. It should not be living with the prospect, but it can be. At least in my district, it's acceptable that it's a spouse or somebody that is living with them. So getting on to page 2 here, we're going to have a little about the military service. So it's pretty easy. Yes, no. And then if it's yes, these a lot of drop-down boxes make it very nice for filling this in regarding the branch and status, pay grade, etc. And they should be able to get this information off their DD-214. If they don't have a DD-214, I have found that this archives.gov, Veteran Military Service Records, is really a pretty great site. I've used it myself, and I think within 2 to 3 weeks, I received DD-214. And I even had an extra checkbox on my submission, and they sent ribbons along too. So that was pretty nice. If their service is not with the active duty Army, and maybe it's only the National Guard without activation, then they'll only have an NGB 22. They won't have a DD 214. So the NGB 22 is what you'll submit with the application. And then we have a box down below that for if they were prior Coast Guard auxiliary. You fill that in with as much information you have, enrollment date, member ID, and such. And if their membership was terminated for cause, you know, you'd want to mark one of those boxes too. Now, this is not highlighted very well, but there's a spot here for filling in who's responsible for recruiting you into the auxiliary. And this would be the auxiliary's name, division, and flotilla number. I've seen a lot of applications come in where this is blank. So I think it's not highlighted enough for people to know. But if you check the instructions for the application and read through that carefully, it might cause this not to be missed as much. Section 2, you were talking about arrest, charges, convictions, or anything else. So this simple yes/no question. If it is yes, they need to submit an extra separate sheet of paper detailing what the issue was. If they have a court document that shows disposition, I suggest sending that in as well. As much information as we can provide the DIROCs, the better, so they can make a proper decision on this. And if there's any doubt whether the situation was serious or not serious, I lean on the side of caution and mark yes anyway. It's better to have all the information up front than to assume it wasn't serious and then have DIROCs uncover it and not accept the applicant. So let's be upfront about it. And then the prospect would initial their 2 spots down below in that section. Page 3, section 3 and 4. It's pretty easy here. You know, section 3 is regarding someone under 18 years of age. We need to have a parent or guardian sign off on this. And then the applicant consent. They just need to read through these points here and then sign at the bottom. And you can see here on point number 4, this is where they built in the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association. So the member can click on that blue link and it will take them to that and explain it to them. Section 5, here we're verifying their citizenship status. So they obviously would mark this box as a U.S. citizen. And then here for the Social Security card, you'll review their Social Security card, making sure that it is a valid Social Security card. But do not make a copy of it and submit it with the application. I've had that happen a couple of times. This is in the instructions. If you read the instructions, it'll tell you that. So then the next thing we're looking at is proof of citizenship. So list A, most commonly we'll have people with a passport or a passport card. If the passport card is expired or the passport, it is acceptable to submit that, but then you have to submit an additional piece of identification. So if they do not have a passport, then you have to choose one item from list B and one item from list C. Most commonly, driver's license or some other federal identification card. And list C, most commonly, that will be a birth certificate, but it could be one of the other items. And again, the person who would check this off will be your fingerprint technician, your citizenship verifier, or law enforcement. Section 6 on page 5 here is kind of a checklist. You know, what are you enclosing in your packet, or making sure that you have reviewed these items on the application. So you don't need to check every box. So if it's a new enrollment, you check that box. If it's a re-enrollment, you would check that one, but you wouldn't need to check both. Next one down is complies with Coast Guard tattooing, body marking. Well, there's a link right there that takes right to the policy, so they can review that. If the applicant is a current youth, adult, member of the VSA Sea Scouts, then you would check that box. Next one down is new member SAM, so here's where you would record the date and score. You check the box for Privacy Act statement. Next box down, this is where you'd actually mark the date of certificate and issue by for their voting safety certificate. Citizenship status verified in section 5. Yes, we did do that, so we would check that box. If they had prior military service, then we would check the box for the DD 214 or the NGB 22. Did we review the arrests, charges, convictions, and with the applicant? Did they initial those two sections there? So then we would check that box. The consent to initial and annual background check, we did have them sign that section, so we would check that box. If there was criminal history, did they submit the extra sheet providing a statement? So we would check that box. And then if the new member is going to immediately be supporting the Coast Guard unit, then we would check that box. So again, we're just making sure that we, check all the applicable boxes, reviewing this to make sure we've got everything covered and what's supposed to be included is included. And as you know by now, it's been several years that we have not been doing fingerprints. So here's the applicant interview record. This is on page 5, section 7. I actually like this to be used right up front when I'm actually doing my interview. It's a very good guide. It helps me make sure I've covered all the points I want to cover with that prospect when I'm speaking with them. What is the auxiliary? What are the, commitments? Talks about the cost, their contribution, computer expectations, email expectations. It's quite a bit. And then the last point down there again talks about the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association. So, again, we no longer need that AUX 10 consent to join the membership because it's built into the application. So page 6, section 7, this is our kind of like sign off ourselves here. Have we done what we did, to make sure this is correct? So the interviewer name, interview position, they sign off. And then here we have the applicant signing off that they understand they've reviewed everything and agree. And then section 8, we've got the flotilla commander endorsement. Again, this means that the flotilla commander has actually reviewed this, making sure that it is complete and accurate. So it's ready to go, and when DIROX gets it, it's complete and perfect. There will be no reason, to delay the processing on the application. So flotilla commander's name's there, their signature and date, etc. And section 9, we don't do anything with that because that is for the director of auxiliary. So some additional notes here. Applications to be submitted printed single-sided. Now I do understand that some districts, DIROXs, you're allowed to email applications directly to their office with password protection. So this would not pertain to you, but if it does, this is the way it should be done. Signatures may need to be in blue ink or may not. In my district, District 9, it used to be standard that blue ink was only ink that was required. But now it's either blue or black. So just check with your chain of leadership on that. Be aware of signatures with stale dates. So again, like I said, there's some people that are very slow in getting through this process. Maybe they've completed the application and they've signed that off and they've gotten it to you, but they never got around to their new member exam yet. Or maybe they had to get a replacement Social Security card. So now we're a few months down the road since they've signed the application. So once they've got these things to you that were, outstanding, and you have a complete package, you really should have this application re-signed and redated. And you can do that above or beside the previous signature and date. There's no need to redo the entire application. But you're just giving it a current date and signature. Currently only need one set of paperwork. I remember some years back, we used to have to send in 2 sets of paperwork to Dialox. But I would still keep a copy on hand. Just in case whatever was sent in gets lost, you've got a completed application ready to go. I would just add new original signatures to it, and you could send that one in. Anything that is emailed, make sure that you adhere to the Coast Guard PII requirements. We have some highly sensitive personal information. We don't want that to get, revealed in, emails and such. Again, OX10 consent to memberships now in the application, so you don't have to do that form anymore. Fingerprints are not required. However, they might be later for some qualifications. Instructions are in the formed warehouse. When you have your package complete, get ready to send it in, review it, and then review it again. And maybe have somebody else proof over it to make sure that you didn't miss something. And do you know who the packet is sent to? If you're sending in original, hard copy paperwork in the mail, who are you sending it to? And flotilla commander needs to know who they're sending it to. Maybe it's their next level supervisor, the division HR officer. So just make sure you know that. Verify with your chain of leadership. If you are mailing application packets, you can get free postage materials. Just check with your materials officer for stamps and envelopes. Priority mail is faster and includes tracking. Some areas may require this, some don't, but just check with your chain of leadership. Okay, never fail to pursue a prospect lead. Always follow up. We don't want to let somebody kind of keep hanging where they then lose interest and don't want to join. We want to maintain our interest in them joining the auxiliary. So be a broken record. Ask for prospect referrals. And how many times have you been in a monthly meeting and HR person says, nothing to report? Well, there's always something to report with what you're doing, and at least mention a need for member referrals. Remember, the recruiting does not rest solely on the shoulders of the HR person. It's everybody's responsibility to be recruiting. All members, all the time. Everybody knows somebody. Make ways to find new members. Make that part of your plan. Whether you're at a public affairs event, you're teaching a boating safety class, you're doing vessel exams at a shoreline or at a marina, and then outside of that, people belong to Rotaries, Lions Club, church, or whatever. There's always ways to make recruiting part of your daily plan, your conversation. So we have this rule: recruit, mentor, retain, and repeat. So recruiting, yes, very important. But once we get somebody in, we have to mentor them, get them through their training, and get them being a productive member. And then we want to retain them. We always want to maintain that conversation, that continual assistance in their growth with the auxiliary. So again, questions, you got a link to those as you log in. And then credit your recruiting time. So when you're out interviewing a prospect and you're helping them with their application, count that as 90C for auxiliary recruiting on your 70/30 or an aux data 2. And as far as attending tonight's session, this is training time for you. So record that on your 7029 using 99D or in aux data 2. Either way works. But yes, this is an actual training session, so you should count that. And here's our contact information if you want to send anything directly to Dwayne or myself. And that is the end of our presentation.
Just a couple of quick thoughts. I do want to make sure you're aware this presentation that Rio just did was being recorded while he gave it, and you can access that through the link that you used to get onto the presentation tonight. And I believe you can fast forward. So like if you had a question about one part of it, I think you can fast forward on YouTube to get there and answer that question. But we do welcome any questions you have, either through that form on the screen for YouTube. We also welcome your questions just directly from you, whichever you prefer. A couple thoughts I had. I want you to remember, that old saying, there's never a second chance to make a first impression. When you meet someone, either AAMS or a referral, be welcoming, be friendly, be supportive. Make sure you listen to them and not just talk to them, and answer any questions they have. And if you don't have the answer right then, make sure you get it in a timely manner that day or the next day, or like Rio said, maybe 48 hours if you need to. But be responsive, because if we're not, it seems like we don't really care that much about having them as a part of our team. The thing to know, we want to find people that have can-do attitudes. People don't have to come with us and have a boat and know everything about a boat and all the rules of the road and stuff. If they're enthusiastic and want to do things, that's the main thing. And we can teach them the skills that they need. And Rio said that if for some reason, maybe they had a death in the family or something, if it's a prospect, through AAMS, but they can still join, that's not a problem. Rio also mentioned about the PII, the personally identification information. And when we do an application, it has a slew of that information, and we are the steward to guard that and protect it. If you go into a DIROC's office, they even have a special sheet that they put on top of an application so people can't just walk by and read it. Another thing that seems almost too simple to share is we have a lot of forms to do, and most of the forms have instructions. So if you have a question, look at the instructions. Some people just guess or don't even think about it. You'll save yourself time. You'll save DIROC's time. You'll have a better relationship with DIROC's if you do your best to answer your own questions. And if you can't, anybody would be welcome. Your questions. Your division HR officer, even your district HO officer. Ask them a question, and they'll be happy to help you. We tried to make this fairly brief and give you a good amount of information. Rio and I both think the new application is a pretty good improvement over the other one. I think it's simpler and a little bit shorter. One thing is when you're going through those different things you can use to show citizenship and identification, be careful, because it's easy to get confused. One question we're getting quite a bit now is if green cards are acceptable rather than citizenship. And the answer is no, not yet. We're hoping that's coming. The Coast Guard already had a version of that. Then they had a change about a year ago. And it used to be that if your green card expired before your term of service, when you enlisted expired, you couldn't enlist. But now, if you have at least 180 days on your green card, you can join the Coast Guard. So that's kind of cool. And we're hoping we'll get the green card approach as well. I think that would add some new members for us, and it's a time when we do need new members. So again, don't rely on AAMS for all your prospects. It's good that they send us some, but if you have tell your, like, be the broken record at meetings, tell the group that we need help, and everybody can be a recruiter. They don't have to do all the paperwork like the HR officers do, but if they give you the contact info, we'll take it from there, and we'll be glad to do it. So just a few things to think about. And again, I hope you enjoyed the session. We enjoyed having you. And if you have any questions, just give us a holler or use that form. And thank you very much for joining us. Please be sure to follow the invitations that we'll send later on for our coming sessions. The next one was on the forms, critical forms. And then that one that follows that is on onboarding. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all later.